Does anybody have any fun plans for the weekend? Utah Arts Festival is this weekend. If you can stay cool enough. All right. Ooh, Lehigh Rodeo. Well, this is going to be a very intimate affair, I believe, unless there's some sort of situation that I'm not aware of. Well, I guess I'll just kick it off here. Just a second, I screwed up on my. So this is the first time I'm using my Mac, so that hopefully I don't have any laggy issues where I sound like a robot. And then you guys can all get the information that you're looking for. Got a lot of stuff to touch on today, so I'm gonna try to keep all my anecdotes and quips to myself. You can follow along at not this URL because that's the wrong one. I didn't have time to change it, but the correct URL is going to be in the chat. That is the correct URL. Thank you very much. This one is not correct. That will be corrected. This is our privacy team. I would like you all to know who are behind the curtain. We have Katie Chalice, who's our director. She is here in the chat. She provides us all sorts of knowledge and compassion. John and Nicole, we are your two student data privacy specialists. We help you with all of your contractual agreements and training and with your staff and provide you with all sorts of resources. Melissa does a lot of all of the work that we need internally within our agency and with some of the data that is sent to us from you. Jeremy is our security specialist. So when it comes to breaches and a lot of the ones and zeros of the tech world, he is the go-to. And then Nicole, she is the angel that allows us to travel to you to spread our message. She's the one that makes it all happen. So that is our team. If you ever need to reach us, you can always go to privacy@schools.utah.gov. Okie dokie. Today's agenda, we want to talk about a little revamp of some privacy training. We got spotlight some LEAs. We got a calendar of event. I would actually like to discuss the time for this meeting. I didn't create a slide for that, but we've learned now that the agency has a more comprehensive shared schedule of all of the times where there are conflicting meetings. I know that this meeting conflicts with another one and has for quite some time. So in working with that, we're going to reanalyze when we do this meeting starting in the next school year. So if you have any suggestions, mornings, afternoons, which would be preferred, maybe like a day of the week. I'm even toying with suspending our July end of the month one and kind of just morphing it into an August one so that our meeting kicks off the month with our data privacy stuff instead of what seems like looking at the month that was passed. So if anybody has any suggestions, comments, questions, suggestions, please put those in the chat or communicate that to us and look for that update for the meeting change when it does come, because it will change because we do have that conflict. So any sort of feedback for that would be great. We've got some items of note that we will discuss. We'll talk about our menu, suggestions, comments, questions, suggestions, questions, comments, and suggestions. The NDPA version 2 is the primary item of note that I would like to discuss. It is not published yet, but we will be going over it, and we would love any sort of conversation or feedback that comes from those slides. So first of all, we would like to talk about our data privacy training revamp. Currently, we have a very robust YouTube page, and we want to go through a lot of those videos and maybe touch on which ones are still relevant, where they're linked for you. We want to see, the educators and all sorts of different things, but primarily one of the things that we want to work on is something that some of the members of my team would like to share with you. So, team member, if you would like to give a little bit more background to the training revamp and what that may look like and what kind of feedback we are requesting, I give you the floor.
So I can do that. Hi, everyone. And then Jeremy, feel free to chime in if you feel so inclined. So here's the story. Currently, there's a requirement for people with access to student data to receive privacy training. You're probably familiar with that requirement and are probably doing it. HB 491 just passed in this legislative session, and it requires anyone with personal information, which is sort of like their term for PII, to receive training. So at first glance, it's like, oh, cool, we're covered because we're already giving training. But the training is specific to student data. And as you know, school districts and charter schools have other types of personal data, particularly educator data. So in response to that bill, our feeling is that student data privacy training needs to remain in place, but also folks with access to educator data are going to need to receive training on privacy surrounding that data. So John and Jeremy and Nicole are going to be spending, I don't know, I guess we could say probably 2 years, maybe a year and a half, working on revamping our training. Part of that will be sort of redesigning, upgrading the student data privacy training. But again, we also need that training for folks who have access to educator data. And that has been prioritized by our board to get something ready for that group first. So the question that and this is all very much like in exploratory mode, so I don't know, it's hard to even explain what options we're considering because we don't really have our options like fully fleshed out. But let me do my best to explain what I think I would love to learn from this group. One option is to create some sort of generic privacy training that talks about privacy principles and giving notice and all that stuff. And it's sort of its own thing. And then dependent upon the type of data that you have access to, it would sort of branch and give more specific use case scenarios, specific checking for understanding questions. Jeremy, I want to acknowledge that this is not exactly what you described to me. I'm not oblivious to that, but it was the best way I could think to just explain it. So that's one option. The other option is to make a training that is kind of more like just for people who have educator data, and the whole lens through which you experience the training is through the lens of I have access to educator data, and a separate training for I have access to student data, and this whole training is focused on student data. Again, to reiterate, two options being, one is just a generic privacy training that has nothing to do specifically with student or educator data. And then once you've completed that, then you experience like kind of sub trainings with specific use cases. The other option is to build those use cases and examples into the training throughout and have two separate standalone trainings. I would be really surprised if that made very much sense. But does anyone have any thoughts on which of those two options you would prefer? Corey has no preference.
And I know that it is a smaller group today, so if somebody is watching this in the future as a recording, you can also email the privacy@schools.utah.gov. Yeah, we would love your feedback there.
Yeah. All right, last chance. Anyone else?
Or maybe the contact to people in your LEA that this may impact so that we could get a better learner view of what stuff it is that they actually do deal with so that we make something that is comprehensive.
Oh, Mike, that's a really interesting point. Jared agrees with Mike. Okay. Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, you guys. Anyone else want to say anything verbally or in the chat? Basic list of each role's responsibilities. That's what I was thinking too. And my team knows this. I've said it like 5 times even today, but like my goal is that I want training, someone to be able to walk away and know how this applies to them. What are my responsibilities? My responsibilities probably don't include reporting to the cyber center, you know, if I'm like a front desk person, but they might include informing my IT staff if I experience a data incident. So I really support that idea of responsibilities that are correlated with each role. Okay, I found this to be helpful. Anyone else want to say anything? Okay, thanks, John, for letting us take a little bit, thanks for letting me take some time.
Oh, no, that's great. I will take the ball and now continue to run down the field. Thank you, Katie. Okay, dokley, let's. Oh, I'm so excited about this. Oh my gosh. All right. So a couple weeks ago, and I'm gonna kind of parse what. Oh, wait, this. How do I get this HB 491 thing off of here? Oh no. All right. Cindy Butterfield, who was, assigned. I like to say voluntold, but that gets a little red line under. She was assigned a task with South Summit as they were doing some transitioning. And, in a lot of that processing, they discovered that they needed some more support in order to establish some new structures and procedures going forward. So what actually ended up happening is instead of doing one of our famous Zooms like we do, what we did was we planned in advance. I drove up to Camas on a Tuesday morning. Oh, pulling into that valley was gorgeous. And then what we did, walked into a conference room, and sitting in there, you can see, was Cindy and their new data manager, their new information security officer, their appointed records officer, curriculum director, PR officer, and their really funny superintendent, a busy guy, popping in and out here and there, making sure that he's a part of the conversation. It was one of the first times since COVID, I think, that we've really done something like this, and actually having all of these entities sitting around the table made for some really interesting conversations and a lot of interesting insights on their part, practices that maybe that they've had, or maybe different ways of disseminating information from the top down so that everybody at the ground level has what they need to do their job. So we spent from 9 a.m. until about 2 p.m. I'll tell you, if you're in Camas, the best lunch, like Cindy said, is at the 7-Eleven. But what ended up happening was we were able to craft all of these things and get all of it kind of ready to go so that they had action items. They have now processes, things that they want to do going forward prior to staff coming back for the fall. So I think that this should serve as a really interesting example of a way that we could work to help further this cause in our organizations, and also go figure out how to do that. and also really just make that culture of privacy something that starts from the top, it goes down, and they just really understand that process. And even just going through and trying to see how we could, oh, there we go, good job, just seeing how we can just do all of these things as a community, and how they wanted to maybe push this out to their community at large, maybe to parents. How can we communicate this out? And talking a lot about those privacy soft skills. So if you and your district would like to have us come out and visit you, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that and some of the things that we'd like to. So July, how many of you will we see in Richfield? We'll be there on the 15th and the 16th, I believe. Richfield's great town, lots of fun. If you go down there, they have put together some nice evening activities in the parks, and they have a lot of excursions that you can do. So if you have not, or if you are out there and you haven't been before, Richfield is a good time. We will be there. If we run into you, hopefully we can have some in-person conversations. And you know what? I wouldn't be opposed to sitting aside with somebody and having a one-on-one, similar to what we just talked about with South Summit. We can actually, one-on-one actually works pretty good, and not through Zoom. August, we want to do these things. I want to do these things. I want to get out there on the road. I want to see you guys in person. I want to have these conversations. I want you to feel like going into the next school year that your privacy infrastructure is sound. I wanted to note that if we do need to do an overnight stay, I would say that would put us anywhere past Price going south in that area. Maybe Vernal, is Vernal a day trip? I don't, maybe Vernal's a day trip, but Cedar City, Delta is somewhere where we can go and come back in a day. But my AI has told me that 45 days notice from today, which is Thursday, June 27th, 2024. That would put us at August 12th. So, Friday afternoons are great if you guys have half days, but we want to get out there. We want to talk to your staff, talk to your secretaries, and just really start off the school year strong with a lot of these privacy things. I mean, I've been at some of these conferences. There's things out there that are just coming up that we'll have to talk about at another time. We will be doing our privacy compliance report webinar at the beginning of September. That is where we will take some of the stuff that we talked about last month in May, which is recorded and on our USPA homepage, which I will link you to at the very end of our presentation. But this one will be a little bit more comprehensive. We'll walk through, and then we also have our contact survey. It's very important for us to keep our contact lists updated and current. That includes different roles as far as the data manager, the information security officer, if you have a separate person that manages your metadata dictionary. And we really want to bring these appointed records officers onto this team, because those 4 roles together are what you need to have that strong privacy infrastructure, so that your admin smiles when they see you and your board loves you before they know they have to. October, we're going on the road again. We've worked with a lot of the service centers, SEDC last March. Worked with all the front desk folks, talked about FERPA, talked about records management. We are going down to the southeastern quadrant in October. If you are part of one of the service centers and you guys want to put something together, let us know. But continue to kind of, reach out to see if, we'll go on that road trip. I've got TSA pre-check, not that that matters, but if maybe we can have a meeting in San Diego. And then November is when we have our annual training, which are we able to confirm, team, our dates for that training right now, or do we want to hold off until a little bit later in the year?
Yeah, go ahead and say it.
Okay, we will be out and about November 12th, 13th, and 14th. It is a week later than we traditionally are out. So we will be, you know, hopefully hitting our traditional spots in the Ogden, northern Utah area, Springville, that central Utah area, and then down in the Washington, Cedar City area. I know for those of you that are on the east side of the state, it feels very biased, and we understand. And so hopefully things like what we suggested here with those service centers are things that, like, this is one of those times where we're trying to go to that eastern part of the state. We'll be in Moab, we'll be in Blanding. So if you would like to see about hopping into that eastern Utah, I'm cool with that. And then the annual report is at this date of publication, November 15th will be when that is due. That will be the Friday after our fall trainings have ended. So the November 12th, 13th, 14th, road show, 15th, Friday, compliance check, due. Thank you very much. And then December, we can all just go hibernate. How does that sound? I mean, it's 100. I actually have a hot tub, and I'm going to inquire to see if I can turn it down, because there are days where the hot tub at 101 is cooler than the air. So I don't know how that really works out. All right, this is big stuff. John Hyatt from Davis brought this to our attention yesterday, that in the model document that we have been using, that has been in our USPA folder, that a lot of you have adopted, the code that was associated with this prohibited collection has changed in the legislative code. So we have updated this link. If you are following along in the chat, you can go to this presentation, click on this hyperlink, and what you will have is a forced copy to update that with the link, and hopefully that will be updated for you so that we can continue to have compliance. That is something that, if this is incorrect on your student data collection notice, this will need to be updated as part of our 2024 compliance check. Items of note. So that was item number 1, student data collection notice update needed. Item number 2, listservs. For those of you that know, we have published 2 listservs. A listserv is kind of like, feels like an old party line, or like a chain letter, or, you know, somebody has a question, or you propose an idea, or hey, and a lot of you are on the TCC listserv or the C Forum listserv. We have one clickable right here to subscribe. We have 57 subscriptions to our privacy listserv currently, and we have 56 currently for our records listserv. We would like this one, you know, privacy is primarily those of us that deal with a lot of the privacy stuff. Records, this one is, I would like to encourage those that are AROs, or anybody in your agency that does deal with records. My hope is that this listserv can grow to include all the front desk people in the state, so that we have this network, this hive mind that can solve all of our problems, because we all know those are the people that solve all of the problems. So let's support them. Let's give them access to more resources. It's really hard to train all of the secretaries in the state at the same time, because they can't leave their schools. Anytime we have a training with those folks, they're not really at the training because they're wondering what's going on at their schools. So let's do them a favor. Let's include them in this message, and let's get the word out to everybody. This video that we are recording now, all of the resources, all of the documents we have, for those of you that are not aware, are all available at our USPA homepage. This is the link right here. It will give you access to everything that we talk about and the recording of this video. Check it out. We have a bunch of newly approved agreements statewide. If these are things that you are interested in, guess what? You can jump on via Exhibit E. One little caveat. This one, Blookit, is the only one of this bunch that has a vendor-specific agreement, which means that Blookit has come back to the LEA and says in Exhibit H, we would like to augment the words in this contract to fit what we want. And that LEA agreed to it. So we would continually like to encourage you that if you are subscribing to an Exhibit E and it's got a big red thing that says warning, when it's a vendor specific, that you're gonna want to take a look at those Exhibit H's, because guess what? There aren't a lot of LEAs that have attorneys on staff, and people are doing their best, and maybe something's in there that your group doesn't want to agree to. And I know that we want to get our teachers access to stuff, but we also need to make sure that our privacy literacy is where it needs to be. So I don't know what the terms are in Blookit. If you were to go into the Auto Exhibit E creator and type Blookit in, it would give you the ability to see who originated it, what they agreed to, and then if you wanted to jump on that, you can. And then we have, Katie went a little bit resource crazy. The team went resource crazy in the past month. We have stuff for data incidents response. It's a one-pager. It's a great infographic, data breach reporting form, HB 182 student survey amendments, guidance document, school climate survey model, parent notification and opt-in form. Holy cow. And legislative highlights for student data privacy. If there are any other sorts of resources or questions or anything that you have regarding any of these topics or any of these resources, please shoot them back to us so that we can make sure that you have all the things that you need, because ultimately our job is to reduce your burden. Speaking of reducing burden, we have this USPA application menu. I don't know if anybody knows about this, but it's a great tool and we've been using it for a long time. And it's always this iterative space. And as you can see, it has been updated. It had taken a little bit, but it's updated and it's currently, it's always kind of updating as things are approved and as things are going active, and making sure that we're updating some of our badging systems. But one thing that I wanted to point out to most of you who are super users and are in this group is that recently I've been going through our registry and looking at every single Utah agreement that exists, because my hope, knowing that we as an alliance, as a state in that SDPC framework, we are going to be moving over the course of the next 18 months to a new platform. SDPC is going to be totally redone and it's going to be really cool. But in doing so, it's in our best interest to make sure that all of the agreements that we have going in there are effective and correct and are in your best interest, because sometimes some of these providers can sneak some stuff in. So while you are familiar with this piece, I would like to point you down to the bottom where I have created two other sheets that you can view. One of them being which products are expiring in 2024. Now, part of this is, and I'm not displaying any of the, and you can click on these now, and then the chart goes all the way over to the right, and it has, the LEAs, the ones that are in the dark green, those are the originators. The ones that are below it are the ones that have subscribed. I tried to format it to where, as you can see, I tried to put like borders around each different product, so at least they were kind of, stratified out a little bit, put in their little groups. But the idea behind this is I want to start reaching out to folks for each one of these pieces of software and say, hey, you're the originator. Are you still going to use this? And if so, do you want to originate it again? And if not, or maybe one of these other folks wants to do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the NDPA too. But I think that there may be opportunities for us to collectively as a community and as good stewards and neighbors to spread the wealth when it comes to getting new DPAs signed, so that some of our pioneering LEAs that started a lot of this work early on in 2018 and 2019, that they don't have to carry the burden of 100+ LEAs that they've originated, or DPAs that they've originated. So we're going to take a look at this. If you'd like to jump in there and take a look, do a little bit of a Control F for your LEA, kind of get a little strategy going as to what you're doing. And then we've got this other one, inactive products. So these are products that are inactive. And so we're going to want to have maybe that same conversation. Do we want to redo some of these? How do we want to do it? And part of that becomes a little bit of a complicated question, especially for these ones that are expiring in 2024, because currently we are using the NDPA version 1, and NDPA version 1 comes with a 3-year disposition. It was released in 2019, the beginning of 2020. And so since last year, a lot of them are coming up for renewal. So this gives us a little bit of a conundrum. One, do we take the next 6 to 8 months of the year and use the current contract that we have to re-up with some of these companies, knowing that we will have to probably renegotiate those in 2027? Or do we collaboratively find stopgaps or work together so that going forward, all of our agreements are a Utah NDPA version 2. Now we've got 25 minutes to go. I'm gonna try my best. But I don't know if I actually linked to the NDPA 2 in here. I was so furiously going through. What you can do is go to our USPA homepage. If somebody can link our USPA homepage in the chat, or I believe actually it may be one of the last. Ooh, let me just demonstrate. Oh, look at that. Oh my goodness, there's so much stuff. USPA homepage. Okay, so what you can do is you can go to this homepage. Oh, look, there's all the stuff that you can't see. Go down here to the types of DPAs, folks. We can see my screen and everything, I'm hoping. What we have here is a listing of the different types of agreements here in Utah. Let's just do this real quick. Here is NDPA version 2. It is not yet available. It is watermarked. We'll see that in just a minute. This is the accompanying usage guide. If you need to download the NDPA version 1, it's right here. But if you'd like to follow along on NDPA, here's these two things, NDPA version 2. I invite you to do that. And actually I can do this, and thank you very much, Nicole, for that. There's that link, and then the link for the usage guide is right here. I'd really like for you folks to take a fine-tooth comb, maybe just think through it before we do publish the NDPA v2. I mean, we're gonna have to have some conversations about what it looks like for us, what it looks like in usage, how we want to collaboratively share some of the load, what it looks like potentially with some of the stuff that Katie had mentioned with employee data. There's a lot of different nuances that we need to cover before we release this thing, but the hope is we can get through a lot of that minutia and really kick it off. The joke is always Labor Day, because I said it would be out last Labor Day, but maybe Labor Day, maybe by the beginning of the school year, we can start shifting some of those ones that are expiring or an active to this new one, or maybe the first of the year. I don't know. I'd like to do it sooner, but I don't want to rush a good thing because there are some, it's a good thing. This is NDPA v2 and oh yeah, I did link these two. Good job, John. All right, so if you are in the thing and you want to link to these, those of you that are watching the recording, please do not use this URL, this tiny URL. This is incorrect. The one that you want to use is the one that's at the beginning of the recording. So these are those two documents that I linked in the chat. What we have here is our title page. You will see that some of the stuff from the NDPA 2 or 1 has been changed. The things that are the same is we will have the LEA's name on there as well as the provider's name. Removed is the date in which the inception of the agreement was, and added very prominently, I hope we can all see, are those minus the protection watermark are elements that show that this document is copywritten by A4L. What we've seen is there are some vendors that will take this and modify it and make it look very similar and use it as their agreement, and that could potentially be hazardous because why would they do that? And then there are other organizations that are akin to A4L themselves that are trying to create their own data privacy agreement. And so we in Utah, we are users of this one, the Student Data Privacy Agreement from the A4L community, and having all of this trademark stuff on here is important when we do use this contract. You'll see here that page 2 is a little bit more clean. We have our contacts right up there at the top. We also have this preamble, and as you can see, this part right here it's blue. And Nicole, you were the eagle-eyed friend that found this, and I'm wondering if you would just want to throw this out to the group as to why this is something that we're kind of like toying with, and to see if anybody in the group has any feedback. This offers educational or digital services. It's this first part right here.
Yeah, I think this is something that we're still looking into to see if we can figure it out too, because this is also new for us. But the question that we're asking ourselves at least is whether this contract is limited to services that offer educational or digital services, or if it's just giving examples of the kinds of services that you might use a DPA for. So I think that we're still kind of looking into that, and hopefully we'll have more information on that in the future.
And it's stuff like that that we're asking of you. If you have time and you, like Nicole, like to read contractual language, but if you do see things in there that make your eyes go a little bit cross, because there are a lot of people that were at this table, and the amount of edits that were made, and Labor Day, it takes a while. So if you can, please help us, give us those extra eyes, that would be fantastical. General offer of privacy terms down here at the bottom. It explains how our Exhibit E works. I mean, a lot of this is just for the sake of the vendor, understanding what they're getting into. And a lot of it is very similar to the agreement that we have been using. The type setting is changed primarily. And one of the things you'll see right here is that they've added a piece for amendments. And that's kind of interesting, because what that means in a sense is that we don't have to renew an agreement if things have changed, which means that there's a material difference between this one and the one that we're currently using, going back to the things that are expiring. NDPA version 1, the one that we're currently using, as I've said, has a 3-year term. 2027 is where we would be if we're continuing to complete these, which we are. We have a bunch of products that are still being approved. The difference is that NDPA version 2 does not have a disposition. There will not be a time that I'm aware of, unless we have an NDPA 3 or that this document will have to go through a renewal process, which creates its benefits and maybe its detractions. We'll have to see if there are any unintended consequences with that. But this could be something, if we as an alliance distribute that weight, could be very helpful, because at most, maybe say an LEA has like 10 DPAs that they're going to be stewards over for the sake of carrying some of that weight. You just have to worry about these 10, and you get the DPAs and you don't have to worry about it until forever, until maybe DPA 3 comes out. There's lots of strategies and things floating in my head onto how we can incorporate this into our ecosystem. Article 1, what is the purpose and scope? We're talking about student data, that it applies to all the laws, that you're going to tell us what your stuff does in Exhibit A, that you're going to tell us what you collect in Exhibit B, that you have all of these notification requirements. Who owns the student data? Well, it very clearly says that the LEA owns that student data, which means that you, the LEA, are also mandated, required to make sure that when your partnership with this vendor ends, that so does the sharing of the data. And we'll talk about that when it comes down to Exhibit D. Parent and student access. This is, a piece about talking about how the parents and some of the transparency should be able to see, what's going on with certain requests. I think that, with our metadata dictionary, we actually are very transparent with the parents beyond what they could find in this document. So that's really exciting. For those of you that don't know, a sub-processor would be like your neighbor's neighbor. So I've got an agreement to share peaches with my neighbor over the fence, and I'll give him my cherries that I can't reach because. And so, but he's got to share cherries with the person next to him. And so he's sharing my cherries. And so that's who the sub-processor would be, is this other group that works with the data. And what this essentially says is that group has to comply with all of these standards. You, the LEA, you need to be in compliance with all of the laws. Like, you can't be some frivolous, crazy LEA that's out there running around. You have to provide your annual notifications. We do that. And we have safeguards. The provider, they have all of these things. They're going to outline it in Exhibit A. Confidentiality, agreements from all employees with access. Ooh, that might be interesting to explore. I don't know much about the confidentiality agreement piece, but we'll tease that out a little bit more. No disclosure. The provider agrees not to sell or disclose student data, with specific exceptions for LEA direction, judicial orders, and safety emergencies. Those are some of the other exceptions in FERPA. De-identified, provider must use the de-identified data for the research, development, and improvement of services, but not for re-identification. And disposition. I wish I could have cleaned this one up a little bit more, but this is one of those important pieces. Because if they have information and there's a data breach, that becomes somewhat of a liability. So it talks about this disposition schedule, the procedure and the termination. Sometimes this is where we will find some pushback in Exhibit H, where they'll want to change maybe some of the lengths of notifications or whatnot. And then there's also, it describes in a little bit more in detail what is going on with Exhibit D. This is my least favorite slide. Look at how I feel embarrassed. I apologize. All right. Advertising limits. We talk about this. A lot of this is just, I know it's just like, John, it's Thursday in June. Like, next week is a holiday. Prohibited uses. If you want to go back, because I got 13 minutes, you can go back and read a synopsis of what these prohibited uses are. Prohibited uses of the student data, for recommendations of products, exceptions to the targeted advertising prohibition, if there is consent or disclosure requirements. It also talks about breaches. And this also, I would say that a majority of the Exhibit H stuff deals in this section, if I was to maybe guess. And 5.2 is something that we can talk about, because audits, whenever we see the word audit in one of these, that could be directly related to Utah. Utah is probably the only state. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's in here, is because of us, is that we in our law have the right to audit. And so that can be changed. Sometimes the vendors come back and want to change this, and I'll show you in a little bit how we're thinking about maybe just more thoughts that we want some feedback on. Data breach, who's responsible, compliance with different laws, notification. Again, a lot of these things are things that they want to nitpick at. We have these different contractual terms. I mean, this is where it gets really granular. I want to keep this as 30,000 foot as possible, but my hope was, to tease out some of these different points. We don't need to go based on each one of these, but some of the ones I wanted to point out is like successors bound. Essentially what that means is like their company gets bought out by somebody else, and so that means that the next company is also bound by this, and then there are different kinds of things that come with that. Who has the authority to bind in their institution, like that you actually have the power to sign the contract, and then waivers. Both parties reserve the right to exercise their rights as deemed expedient. Exhibit A, it's this, I mean, the exhibits are the same. So if you're familiar, I mean, we can breeze through these. One of the things I did want to mention about Exhibit A is that our friends in the Northeast, they have a practice of instead of letting the vendor fill out Exhibit A, they fill out Exhibit A before they send it to the vendor, which allows a little bit more control over the language that comes into Exhibit A. They have told us, our friends in New England have told us of instances, and we've seen it here in Utah, to where vendors will put terminology in Exhibit A, and because it is part of a contract, it can change the way that the contract is executed. And so that's something, food for thought about us not necessarily giving them the option to complete that. Exhibit B. Now, Exhibit B is the one that, is really important, because those are those data points. What are they collecting? And remember, depending upon what this service is provided, if it's a typing app, they don't necessarily need to know a lot of information about those kids. So feel free to push back if you feel that yuck factor. But what you'll see here, and this was put into place for a lot of those products that maybe, or a lot of those vendors that offer multiple products. And so maybe they're looking at different types of PII that is being shared. So what you'll see here is how this has been reformatted so that it can click through all of the different pieces. Guidance counselor, there's a lot of different pieces of information on here. So let's make sure that we're cognizant of what we're sharing and maybe why they are interested in gathering that information. Exhibit C is the definitions. I've covered some of those, like successors bound and subprocessor, targeted advertising. Student generated content is something that is worth talking about too in the future. I know that we have issues sometimes with products where a student is creating a portfolio of work, and so there becomes questions about who then and how to exchange that. Exhibit D, this is the one that we use to dispose of the data. As you can see, this is much more comprehensive than it was in the past. It is now changed from disposition of data to special instructions for disposition of data. And as you can see, it's formatted better so that it is filled out properly, which means it's not filled out because it's a model document within a model document, and you use this when your partnership has ended. Exhibit E, it's secret. That's the one that we use to subscribe. We're going with this one, needs formatting and all sorts of stuff, but it was intentionally left blank for the version that's shared because of those proprietary contractual issues. As you can see here, Exhibit F has improved from the two versions in that this first sentence is changes the scope of Exhibit F, which means the provider must mark one or more frameworks with which it complies. And then you can see here the space provided below is for other things as noted. So this is not optional like it had been in the past. Exhibit G, now this is the one that we've always had blank because we never put in any terms, and I don't anticipate that we will put anything in Exhibit G as far as something that has to be a change of the provisions. But there has been conversation about what you see over there on the left and is linked as well, a hyperlink to 53E-9-309, where it suggests where it shows, and you can see how it's highlighted there, that right to audit. So the thought is maybe incorporating where our law is displayed that, hey, vendor, just so you know, this is in our law. And it is also in the DPA. So this is not something that you can change. So it's preemptively, hopefully preventing that process, that request. This is going to be up on our homepage. Any questions you guys may have, it's going to be up here. If you want to, contact Nicole or I, you can do it down here at the bottom. If you have any suggestions about dates and times for recurring meetings, please do. If not, then we will do our best to find something that seems to be conducive, and hopefully start doing those at the beginning of the months instead of the end of the months. But that's something that we'll just clarify and let you know, and maybe we'll use our listservs to do so, and hopefully you use the listservs as well. I've talked a lot, and this is not the correct URL, so I'm going to hit the escape button and I'm going to correct it. So while I do a little bit of backwards housekeeping, if anybody has anything that they would like to talk about, please go ahead and do so now. And if not, you are free to leave. Corey Little, you want to talk to me?
Well, I'd like to know what other districts do with Google tools that are not part of the core product.
Like extensions?
Like Google Lens.
Mm.
There's probably about 30 or 40 of them on my list.
Jeremy, do you have any comment on maybe, because it's always some of those other things that always just makes my brain swirl, but I know that there's a piece of the single sign-on that may, I mean, Google Lens is a Google product. Friends?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really remember. I mean, does Google have a DPA in general? Because I thought that
No.
they do. Yeah.
It's their SOC report that that we go by.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah.
So what do you mean specifically, Corey?
Well, I mean, I have something that's covered by, if it's a Google core product, like whatever it used to be called for education.
Mm.
But all these that are not, I don't have a DPA for those. I don't know what I do, how I list those.
That's a good question. I'm embarrassed, but I'm like spacing on this. I know when I was in Tooele, we went and dug into the terms and conditions, because like what you're speaking to, Corey, is that the terms and conditions for products are different than like marketplace products, for example. I think there's like the core services, marketplace, and then there's something in between, right? Like
Yeah, like additional services.
additional services, I think is the term. Okay, I don't have an answer for you, but this is, I do think I know two good people to reach out to if you're looking for feedback from LEAs. One is Dave Bowman in Jordan District. And the other, actually, Dave's probably your best bet. But I think you could also contact Whitney Wallace in Tooele District.
Okay,
And if you do, will you CC one of us on it?
sure.
Jeremy would be a good fit for that.
I said one of us, but I meant me. Yeah, I think in my mind back then it was, I mean, I was in elementary school, so it was different too, because I was reading the terms and conditions for those purposes as well. But it just felt like still under the umbrella of Google at the end of the day, which, you know, they already didn't have a DPA. So I was like, meh. But yeah, I would like a good answer for that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. It looks like we've got 30 seconds left according to my Zoom, so I'm going to end it now. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, privacy@schools.utah.gov, and we'll see you on the flip side.